Hi there, welcome to Sukkos before Sukkos. Just a couple of days left until Sukkos is upon us. So let's continue with Mishna Ches in Perek Daled. The Mishnah says, Halo v'simcha shmoina, which means the mitzvah of Halo, reading the Halo, and mitzvah of Simcha, of joy, is for 8 days. Ketzad. What does this mean? Melamed, this teaches us, Shechayev Adam, that a person is obligated by Halo, with the mitzvah of Halo, uve Simcha, and with the joy of the Yom Tov and the honor of Yom Tov Achron Shel Chag, of the last day of the Chag, which means the last day of Yom Tov, Shmini Atzeres Kishar Kol Yimei Sechag, like all the other days of the Chag. As what we've mentioned before, the Hallel, the reason that what it says the Hallel is all 8 days, is a complete Hallel, is because there were different korbanos in every single day, and so too the mitzvah of Simcha is not only on the 7 days of Sukkot, but we learn out, the Gemara learns out from the Pasuk, which says V'hoyiso Ach Sameach. You should be only happy. That extra word Ach includes the last day of what's called the Yom Tov Achron, the last Yom Tov, which is Shmini Atzeres as well. It says Sukkah Shiva. We said that the mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah is for 7 days. Keitzad, how does that work? Gomar Milecho, if a person has finished eating on the 7th day, Lo Yatir Sukkah, so he should not unbind his sukkah from the way that it's been set up in order to destroy his to dismantle his sukkah. Because even though he's not going to be eating there for the continuation of the day, he still has an obligation. Technically, there's still an obligation of the day for the sukkah, because the sukkah is for all 7 days. But from the time of Mincha Ketana, which is 9.5 hours into the day, 2.5 hours before the Shkia, already then he brings into the house his vessels, his things that he used inside the sukkah, for the honor of the last day of the Yom Tov, that it should seem, that it should look like he's preparing new foods and new kalim, new vessels for the last day of Yom Tov. The halacha is, of course, that we do sit in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres, but we don't make a bracha, because technically the mitzvah is only for 7 days. Next Mishnah. This Mishnah talks about the Nisuch HaMayim. Now, we've mentioned before that throughout the year they used to pour wine with the korbanos on the Mizbeach. But on the 7 days of Sukkot, they would pour water together with the wine. Now, this is something which is not written explicitly in the Torah, and it's something which the Tzukim, the people who didn't believe in the Torah Shebaal Peh, they argued against, and therefore the Chachamim ensured that the drawing of the water and the pouring of the water on the Mizbeach was done with great fanfare, so that everyone should understand that this is the proper way of doing things, and the way that the Tzukim profess things to do was not actually right. And that's what the Mishnah describes here and continues to describe in the 5th parak. So the Mishnah says, Nisuch HaMayim Ketzad, the pouring of the water, how did that work? It says, they would have a big flask, of a golden flask, which was able to hold 3 lug, which is about 1.5 liters. A kohen would fill this up from the shiluach, was a certain well which was in Yerushalayim, and when he would bring it l'shar hamayim, to a certain gate of the Beis Hamikdash, which is called the shar hamayim, literally the water gate, which actually was called this name because it was used for this purpose. Toku v'hiriu v'toku, so they would blow a tekiah and a trua and a tekiah. The people would, the kohenim would blow. In order to, this is all connected with the idea of shaktem mayim b'sosim, which the Navi says that when you draw water, you do it with joy. It says Allah, the kohen who merited to do this avodah, would go up bakevesh onto the wrap of the mizbeach. Ufanali smoiloi, he would turn to his left. Shnei sefolim shokesef hoyusham. There were 2 buckets of silver buckets which were over there. Rabbi Yehuda says they weren't actually silver, but shel sid hoyu, they were actually lime. Elo shahoyu mushcharim pnei mipnei yayin, but they were darkened. They looked to be black because of the wine which had been in them all the time. Umulukovin, now these 2 buckets lay next to each other, but they were closed on the bottom. Umulukovin kamin shnei chotmin dakin. They had holes in them like 2 nostrils, 2 thin nostrils. Echon mu'uve, the one bucket had very wide holes. The echod dak, and the one was very thin. The reason is because the one they used to pour the water into, and the other one they used to pour the wine into. They used to pour the water and the wine at the same time. Kadeshu shneim kolin b'bas achas, so that they would both go down at the same time. So they would pour the water, the Kohen would pour the water and the wine at the same time. The wine obviously takes a bit longer, it's a bit thicker than the water, it takes longer, and therefore the holes would be a little bit bigger. The wine would trickle down the Mizbeach until it would go to a certain point where it would go down deep into the earth. So that they would both finish at the same time. That's why the different size in the holes. It says Ma'aravi Shamayim, the one which was on the west, which means they were right next to each other. The one which was closest to the western side was Shamayim, was for the water. Mizrachi, the one on the eastern side, Shoyain, was for the wine. It says Ira Shamayim l'tech Shoyain. If the Kohen by mistake poured the water into the one which is for wine, Shoyain l'tech Mayim, or if he did the wine into the water, Yossi, he's fulfilled his obligation, but the Evid. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda argues, and he argues on two things. He says, first of all, it wasn't 3 lug, it was only 1 lug. And second of all, it wasn't only done on the days of Sukkot, it was also done Kol Shmoina, it was done on all 8 days, also on Shmini Atzeres. The one pouring the water, they would say, the one pouring the water and the wine, but especially the water, they would say to this person, pick up your hand, let us see that you are actually pouring that water into this bucket, which is going to go down in the Mizbeach and down into those holes. Because there was once that stuck in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash. He was a Kohen, he was a stuki, as were many of the people in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, and he poured, instead of pouring it down the holes, which he wasn't prepared to do because he didn't believe in it, he poured it on his feet. Again, and all the people stoned him with their esrogim. Must have been quite painful, but that's what they did, and therefore they would say to the person, pick up your hand, so they were able to see exactly that you're doing the mitzvah properly. Says the Mishnah Yud, the same way that it was done in the weekday, so it was done on Shabbos, except that they would have to fill it up on Erev Shabbos. And the next parak will describe about the filling up and how that was done with great joy. Chavishul Zov, they would fill it up, a Chavishul Zov Sha'ena Mekudeshes, they would fill it up in a golden barrel, which was not part of the kalim, the vessels of the Beis Hamikdash. The reason is because the rule is that any vessel of the Beis Hamikdash which has water or any liquid which remains in it overnight, it becomes possible, the water becomes invalid. It's called possible belina by staying overnight. But this was not a holy vessel, and therefore wasn't a problem. They would fill it up mina shiloach from that same spring on Erev Shabbos. Manicha belishka, they would put it in the office, they would leave it somewhere in the Beis Hamikdash. Nishbecha oynis galsa. What happened if it was spilled, or if the water was uncovered, which is also a problem for water to lie uncovered, as the Mishnah will say. Hayimamalim min akir, then they would fill up from the kir, the wash basin which the Kohanim used to wash their hands and feet, and that was not a problem of lina because it was actually connected to a well. And that's another concept. The Mishnah says, because any water and any wine which is revealed, which is uncovered, is possible for the Mizbeach, and therefore they would have to, if they found that the water which they prepared on Erev Shabbos was revealed, was uncovered, or it had been spilt, so then they would have to take water from the kir. So Mr. Shem, tomorrow we will continue with Mishnah Aleph of Perek Ches, and hopefully we'll be able to finish the Perek and the entire Masechta before Sukkot. I wish you a wonderful day.